But I am not in any way dangerous or crazy. I am simply unwell and fighting to get better from a very well recognised disorder that I did not choose to have. Hello everybody, welcome to Open Mind Ed. My name is Ed and yes, welcome. I have been considering doing YouTube videos talking about mental health for quite some time, but things tended to get in the way, like exams and courses and other things, and also at times I was too unwell to really do anything, never mind trying to make YouTube videos. But here I am now, after what has been an extremely difficult year, wanting to open up and talk about my own mental health in hope that it may help others who are struggling with their own mental health at the moment. This video will be quite heavy. For my first video, I wasn't really sure whether to keep it more light-hearted or to just tell my story, as it were. I decided that the best way to start this channel was to essentially explain where I am in life, and in order to do so, to talk about my experience last year, which means I will very much be touching on some very sensitive topics. Quick disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional. I can only really talk from my own perspective as someone who has experienced mental illness, so please don't take everything I say as gospel. If you think that anything I say in this video may apply to you, please contact a professional and seek out a professional diagnosis. I have recently come out of a mental health hospital in which I spent around 4 months, and today I wanted to explain exactly what happened and how I ended up there. So, a little bit about me. My name is Ed. At time of recording, I am 21 years old. I enjoy acting, writing, directing, singing, basically anything to do with the performing arts, and it is something that I would love to get into sometime in the future. I also very much enjoy hobbies such as chess, which I have also very much gotten into recently. I live with my mum and younger brother, who always beats me at chess, and I also live with my little 4-year-old rabbit Barney. My dad lives separately as my mum and dad are divorced, but I see my dad plenty and have a very close relationship with my mum, dad and my brother. I finished school in 2019, having achieved what I felt were good grades in my GCSEs and A-levels, and then went on to do a drama course for about 1.5 years. Alongside all that, I have also had to deal with quite severe mental illness for a number of years now, mainly consisting of anxiety, depression and OCD, also known as obsessive compulsive disorder. This mainly impacted me throughout my secondary school career from about age 13 onwards, and continued to have a massive impact on me once I left. If you had asked me about 1 year ago which elements of my mental illness seemed to affect me the most, I would have probably put them in the order of depression, anxiety, and then OCD. However, as I learnt quite harshly during the last year, OCD has been impacting my life in many ways I did not even realise. And it got so bad that I felt the only way I could get any help was to have myself placed into a mental health hospital, in which I was in from September 2021 to January 2022. At the time of making this video, I've been home about 2 weeks. Being in hospital was a peculiar experience to say the least. It was not a place I ever expected to end up, but end up there I did, and I would spend about 4 months there before I felt able to come back home. If I'm honest, I am very scared about doing this video. I'm very nervous and anxious about being misunderstood or labelled as something I am not, but I know that there are so many people out there experiencing the same thing that I have had to go through, and so I'm going to try my best to explain what that was. Leading up to going into hospital, I was extremely poorly. I was not taking care of myself at all. I was staying awake all night and then sleeping most of the day. I was barely eating, at most eating maybe 1 ham sandwich a day, sometimes not eating anything at all. Due to my anxiety, I developed this constant feeling of nausea that would not go away, which made it impossible to leave the house really because I felt so unwell. I cut off basically all contact with my friends, and even though I was living with my mum and brother, I barely saw them because I was just hiding in my room. This went on for about 7 months in total, though I was not doing well before that either. My parents were at a loss, as were therapists and doctors I went to see. I tried medication, I tried talking to people, but all that seemed to happen was that I kept getting worse. The truth was, I wasn't being honest with them, with my family, friends, or even my health professionals. I was experiencing incredibly disturbing, intrusive thoughts about harming other people, thoughts I did not want to have, and thoughts that would not go away no matter how much I tried. I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody because I was so confused and upset and felt I was beyond help and felt I would be better off dead for the safety of all those around me. The truth of what was going on, which I did not realise at the time, was that I was suffering from an extremely well-recognised disorder known as OCD. According to the mental health charity Mind, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, has two main parts: obsessions and compulsions. Obsessions are unwelcome thoughts, images, urges, worries, or doubts that repeatedly appear in your mind. So, for an example, an unwanted thought might be accidentally running over someone with your car. Compulsions are repetitive activities that you do to reduce the anxiety caused by the obsession. It could be something like repeatedly checking a door is locked, repeating a specific phrase in your head, or checking how your body feels. Essentially, what I was experiencing were what are known as intrusive thoughts. I'll go into more detail about this topic in another video, but essentially intrusive thoughts are thoughts that, well, you almost certainly don't want to have. We all get intrusive thoughts, whether you have OCD or not. For example, you may be standing on a train platform when suddenly a thought pops into your head: hey, what if I just jumped in front of an oncoming train? For someone without OCD, this thought will most likely go in one ear and out the other. You may not even really realise you had the thought, and if you did, it may disturb you very briefly, but you will most likely move on from it very quickly. For someone with OCD, the story is quite different. You see, the problem isn't the intrusive thoughts themselves, but our reactions to them that lead to the compulsions. For me, I was so terrified by the idea of ever hurting anyone that my brain started sending me all these images and thoughts and basically saying to me, hey, you're having these thoughts. You're dangerous. You're a danger to society. You should be locked away. You need to be kept away from people. This went on for months, and I felt I could not escape. Then in came the compulsions. In what you would hear as the stereotypes of OCD, the sort of compulsions that you would probably hear about would be things like being overly tidy or overly washing your hands. I did actually experience the compulsion of overly washing my hands at one point, but more on that in another video. While people with OCD can experience these compulsions, OCD is a widely misunderstood disorder, and people can experience compulsions and intrusive thoughts in many different ways. There are really two types of compulsions: physical and mental. Physical compulsions are things like hand washing, for example. It might be having to tap something a certain amount of times because your OCD is telling you that if you don't, something bad will happen to your family. This is known as magical thinking. Again, more on this in another video. What I developed were more mental compulsions. I researched excessively, looking for some hope to try and gain some understanding, but instead convinced myself that I was some sort of sadistic psychopath, a monster, a danger to society who had to be locked away, that it would have been better if I had never been born and that there was no hope for me. I avoided programs that showed any violence whatsoever, and I refused to leave the house out of fear of harming someone, the compulsion there being avoidance. The specific term used to describe the type of OCD I was experiencing is often referred to as Harm OCD. According to verywellmind.com, Harm OCD is a specific type of OCD in which the person fears causing harm to him/herself or others. But I didn't know this. I was aware that I had had issues with OCD in the past, but I didn't even take that on board. I just came to believe I was a closeted sociopath, a monster, and that there were only two places for me: locked up or in the ground. But of course, OCD wasn't content. And now, all of a sudden, I was having these terrifying thoughts of harming my family. OCD often attacks what matters to you the most. And so, of course, its next target was the people I loved and cared about. I was completely breaking down, completely at a loss, literally using boxes in my room to box myself in my room at night, terrified that I would wake up the next day to find that I had harmed my mum or my brother or my rabbit. I felt I had no choice to end it, to end my life, because it felt that the only way I could be the best person I could be was to no longer be a person anymore. I realised, after much thought, however, that I really didn't want to die. I wanted to live, but I didn't know how. I was so emotionally numb, so tired, but a part of me still wanted to live. So at that point, I thought I only really had two options. Option A, take my own life. Option B, go into hospital. This is quite an extreme example, so don't feel that if you are struggling at all that the place you belong in is a mental hospital. There are many other ways you can get help. This was just how I felt at the time. And so, on a late evening in September last year, having researched and avoided and cried and cried and cried and having no more hope left in me, I went into the kitchen, sat down next to my mom and told her that I was terrified that I was going to hurt her or my brother. It's very strange thinking back on this time. I was terrified, but I had been so on edge for months and so depressed that I'd come to feel just numb. It felt like my brain had sort of just shut down. I didn't really feel anymore, which was also terrifying. I felt so disconnected from myself. I felt like I had no personality anymore. I felt like I was nothing. I told my mum I felt I had to be locked away, that I was dangerous, that it was just what had to happen. My mum already knew I was very poorly, but to hear that from me when I am not the sort of person who likes to be put into extremely anxiety-inducing situations, never mind a mental health hospital with all the stigma around it, she knew I was terrified and needed help urgently. The next day, we went to the hospital, waited for a few hours, and then spoke to someone. I still didn't really feel able to fully open up. I was still terrified of explaining how I was feeling and what all these thoughts going through my head were. And so they said they didn't think hospital was best for me. They sent me home, said they would send a home treatment team out, and that they wished the best for me. 2 days later, I am in the shower, breaking down, crying. I have an appointment with the psychiatrist from the home treatment team and decide enough is enough. We go to the appointment. I tell him I think I am a sociopath, that I am a danger to my family, to society, and that I think I need to be locked away. And that night, it was my first night in a mental health hospital, terrified and feeling alone, and I would not be leaving for another 4 months. It's very, very important to be clear about a number of things when it comes to Harm OCD and really OCD in general. People with OCD are not dangerous. Having these thoughts does not make them dangerous, as we all have scary thoughts from time to time. But for people with OCD, they are in fact so terrified by these thoughts that they would do anything not to have them and become obsessed by them. This creates the obsession and the inability to move on from these thoughts. It could be said and is argued that people with OCD are in fact some of the least dangerous people out there because they can be so terrified of hurting anyone. But if you have ever tried not having a thought, you'll probably realise that trying not to have a thought actually makes you think about that thought even more. Try not thinking about a pink elephant for the next 10 seconds. I am not dangerous, not remotely. I am terrified by the thought of harming anyone and would rather take my own life than harm anyone in any way. As I said earlier, I knew I had had issues with OCD in the past, but I was unable to convince myself that it was OCD that was causing this. The thing about OCD is that you can't reason with it. In fact, trying to reason with it is often a mental compulsion and can lead you further and further down the rabbit hole of OCD as you fall into more and more of its traps. Hey, you had a thought about what if you stabbed someone? You need to research this, you might be dangerous. Hey, you had a thought of being really rude to someone. This makes you a bad person, you need to be kept away from everyone. These were the sorts of thoughts and compulsions going through my head. OCD demands certainty that you won't be a bad person or that the bad thing won't happen when we live in a world in which certainty is impossible to achieve. OCD also demands perfection. So any negative feelings I had, such as anger or jealousy, I would see as an example of me being a bad person and an example of needing to be kept away from people. You found that person really difficult earlier. How could you be so judgmental? Clearly, you need to be kept away from people because you are capable of dangerous things. All these thoughts, all these feelings were 24/7. Imagine having someone screaming at you all day, every day that you are evil, that you are a monster, a danger to everyone around you, and you may get a sense of what living with OCD can be like. I will talk more about my experience in hospital in another video, but essentially I got very lucky with the psychologist who worked on the ward and who I worked with for several months. For the purposes of confidentiality, I will simply call her Jane. Jane, in some respects, it feels like saved me. She never judged me for anything I said, for any of the out of control intrusive thoughts that I was having. She just listened and talked it through with me each week. It would take about 3 months for me to begin to contemplate the possibility that I wasn't actually a dangerous monster, but that I was actually an extremely sensitive person, terrified of harming anybody, and that was why these thoughts were scaring me so much. Quite simply, I was unwell. Because I was so scared of harming anyone and so scared of thinking about harming anyone, the thoughts became obsessive. Not because I at all wanted to harm anyone, but because of the exact opposite. I was utterly terrified by the idea. I am back home now. I had my last appointment with Jane just before I left the ward, and I am slowly starting to feel like myself again. I will be starting treatment for OCD very soon. I am incredibly lucky. For many, treatment is waiting on a long waiting list while they continue to struggle and hold on as best they can. But waiting lists can be up to a year, maybe even 2 years. For me, getting any help on the NHS in terms of OCD treatment, I would have had to wait for about 1.5 years. I am still unwell. I am someone suffering from a mental illness that I did not choose to have. Some days I still feel like that monster who terrified me and made me feel like I was going insane. But on those days, I remember all I have gone through, all I have sacrificed, and how much I have fought to still be here now. I am much more open with my parents. I am talking to my friends again. Things are slowly getting better. Even now, I am scared. I'm scared that by talking about these intrusive thoughts that I have no control over, that people will decide that I am insane or crazy, or that they won't want to get to know me or be around me. But I am not in any way dangerous or crazy. I am simply unwell and fighting to get better from a very well recognised disorder that I did not choose to have. There are so many people out there right now struggling and terrified and feel like they have nowhere to turn. And if one of them finds this video and gains some hope, some understanding, then this will have been worth it. You are not dangerous. You are not insane. You are unwell and can be helped, as I have been. OCD is not fun. It is not a joke, and it is not something I would wish on anyone. OCD nearly destroyed my life. But here I am, having just celebrated my 21st birthday, and for the first time in a long time, thinking that there is a future to be had. I will continue to fight. I will continue holding on to hope. By speaking out, I hope others will feel able to fight and hold on to hope also. One crucial bit of advice I would like to give is that if you are struggling, please speak out and reach out for help. This doesn't mean having to have a conversation with your parents or your friends if you don't want to, though brilliant if you can. There are many helplines and websites in which you can find support and help that helped get me through some of my darkest times and that I hope could help you. You are not alone. You are not a lost cause. You can be helped. Speaking out saved my life, and I hope others can speak out and save their own lives. I will leave links down below to websites that talk and discuss about OCD. Harm OCD is only one way in which OCD can present itself, and I will talk about those other ways in other videos. I will also leave helplines for numbers down below that you can hopefully use if you are struggling. I am from the UK, so the helplines I put down below will basically all be set in the UK, but if you're in another country, do some research. There will be helplines available, and please do reach out to them if you feel that you need some help, whether that be with OCD or any other form of mental illness. This is just the start of this channel. I know this was quite a heavy video, but I plan to do a variety of different videos and touch on a number of different topics surrounding mental health. I will also do videos that are a bit more light-hearted and fun and may include some singing along the way. More on that another time. I have many more videos planned talking about my experiences with anxiety, depression and OCD. I also hope to reach out to others who have experienced mental illness, to talk to them and learn from them, and to provide hope to others and people, and just provide some hope that you can still live a good and happy and fulfilling life even when battling a mental illness. Thank you very much for watching. Please consider subscribing and following me on Instagram at openmind_ed_mh. You will be okay. There is a life worth living. See you in the next video. Oh.